Dr. Wayne to a certain extent. Greetings. So happy you're joining us for Creating Zola Mondays. We are the Association of Black Psychologists, and we're here today with a very special guest, Professor Wayne Chandler, who's going to share with us some of his research and studies over these past couple of decades that has been so profound and impactful on our community and our health. I'm Dr. Linda James Myers, a past president of the Association of Black Psychologists, as well as Elder of Elders Emerita, and probably have worn at least 10 different hats in that association. I've been there so long. But I'm pleased to be with you today because we want to create Zola. As you know, Zola is that love energy that ignites that healing energy that we so desperately need today. I am going to then have the rest of my panel introduce themselves, and then we'll circle back to our guest.
Well, I'll jump in and say I'm Harvey Linder. I'm a clinical psychologist in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm certainly, all of you have heard of Minneapolis, Minnesota now. I won't say a whole lot more about it. I've been involved in ABPSI for many, many years and have had several roles myself. Midwestern coordinator, one of the founders of the local chapter here. And I'm now a member of the ABPSI Ethics Committee. Jojo, you want to go next?
Yeah, I was getting distracted. Hi, I'm Dr. Janisha Hickson. I'm the current chair of the DC ABPSI and National ABPSI Public Relations, as well as the National Programming Subcommittee Chair for the Southbound Healing Circle. So super excited for this conversation. I think it's super timely, and hopefully we can offer folks some tools, right, to kind of get through these turbulent times. William?
Yeah, my name is William Parham, and I am the Crisis Committee Chair for Southbound Healing Circles. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and speaking with Dr. Chandler today.
And so, Professor Chandler
escaped.
I'm sorry?
I said Dr. Chandler escaped for a moment.
Oh, okay. Well, we may need to do that at any time, so we have to be prepared in these days and times. Dr. Chandler wrote a book a few decades ago called Ancient Futures. And we're so happy to have him here today because these ancient futures are now the present in so many ways. And he's also done so many other kinds of things that he will share. But I'm going to let him introduce himself to you, and then we're going to get our conversation started.
Okay. I wear a lot of hats. So just to keep it brief, on this particular journey, I began working with a brother out of Rutgers University named Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. I worked with Ivan for about 10 years, writing annually in a book, which was the African Journal of African Civilizations, the Journal of African Civilizations, which was this book here. And we did some pretty outstanding work. Brother Dr. Finch was part of that. Runoka Rashidi was part of that. We had a pretty amazing group of people, scholars, that contributed to that particular journal. And we altered the way history, was perceived, and the role that we as African people, as Black people, played in that role in the various civilizations around the globe. So that was one hat that I wore for quite a while. And then, I'm very involved in alternative healing practices. And that focus deals specifically with energy and what I refer to as beams, which is bioelectric energy management systems. And that deals with basically going in and looking at the different areas of the body that generate life force and how to bring those areas back into balance so that the body as a whole vibrates more effectively, more efficiently, um, more vibrantly, so that, you have a higher level of practical health as you journey out into the world. Um, I do retreats annually, different places in the world. I like to go. I've done Egypt. I've done Europe, India, Costa Rica. I've been a lot of places doing these retreats. Jamaica, of course. I like going to Jamaica. Matter of fact, I'll be in Jamaica in April. So yeah, I love doing that. And just being heavily on the lecture circuit, not as much as I used to be before we entered the age of COVID. That changed the game, for a couple of years running. And so when we came out on the other side of that, we were operating in a different paradigm, and so um, it's been about like reorganizing, reestablishing, redesigning, rebuilding specific directions as it speaks to my involvement, on the lecture circuit and what all of that entails.
Well, you
Yeah, then I like to play around as Linda knows. I like to play around in the investment circles. So I like watching what money does on a global scale and what the new money is going to become, what the old money is transforming into, and yeah, just trying to stay abreast. So for that I actually created a platform called WBC after my initials, but it means Wealth Building Community. And we bring in different individuals to speak on different avenues and different ways to approach the new money or what's coming around the corner with respect to creating abundance and how that integrates with our own mental process in terms of looking at ourselves as abundance generators and stepping out and away from the whole dynamic of poverty consciousness. So those are some of the things that I do. I'm working on my next book now. That should be out shortly. I've already sent specific chapters in to my publisher, and yeah, it's been a very fascinating ride, to say the least.
sounds so. That's why we're going to have you on for 3 sessions. We need a special session for each of those topics. Maybe we won't do the financial topic, but definitely need to talk about the energy and all of those things, the healing. And do you still have a retreat coming up in Cambodia?
You know what? Right now, that's in the neutral zone because Cambodia is at war with Thailand, and so I'm trying to get information with individuals, boots on the ground. A really good friend of mine just returned. I guess it's been about 2 weeks. I've been trying to get him to slow down and let me know what things look like because when he got back, the first thing he did when he dropped an email to me, well, I just got back from two war-torn countries, and I know one of them was Cambodia.
Mm.
because he has residence in Cambodia. So so yeah, I'm just really trying to kind of source that out, and because I can go, but I'm not going to take anybody else over there if things are unstable. And I do know they had dropped a couple of explosive devices in Siem Reap, which is where we were going to be based.
Mm. Well, when you started to introduce yourself, when you talked about the Journal of African Civilization and um, the work that you've done with so many of the men who are now ancestors, and I wondered if you would share with us a bit about this. Um, so we know Rashidi Renoko is one of the people who traveled the world and showed the African roots of so many cultures. And Van Sertima is the one who wrote "They Came Before Columbus." So a lot of elders, once elders, but now ancestors who have contributed so much to our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding about who we are and what we are. But I'm so impressed and have been with Ancient Futures because what prompted you to go back and write about the notion of the principles and how has that impacted your life?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the book that I used, which was based on an aspect of the Hermetic philosophy and specific axioms that are pretty inescapable in terms of our universal cosmology and how they impact us on a daily basis. And I came across that information and studied that information in like the early 70s. And so looking at what we were doing, especially me specifically with the Journal of African Civilizations, going back and uncovering all of these amazing contributions and really cultural designs that move civilization as a whole forward, I began to see the integration between what we had done in antiquity and then how that connected, especially as that stream of thought moved through Kemet or Egypt, how that connected to these specific axioms. And I went and I picked up that book. I went back through it and I said, wow. And I could see the fusion between the axioms and the development of various aspects of civilization, Black civilization, around the world. And so I just took the time, made the effort, and dropped, I think it was about maybe eight pages in a book that we did, which was Egypt, Child of Africa. And I remember Asa in a lecture said those were the deepest 10 pages he had ever read. And I had gone over Tony Browder. I'd gone over his place one afternoon, and we were sitting around chopping it up, and I saw that he had the book in his library. So I picked it up, started flipping through it, and he had so much stuff underlined. And then it dawned on me that in our circle, we did not know this information, that this was new and somewhat abstract, to our scholars. And that made me really want to go in and explore it even more deeply and find a practicum to release that information amongst our folks. And that gave birth to Ancient Future.
Mhm.
So the Hermetic tradition you referred to is coming from ancient Kemet, and Jehudi would be the name we'd probably use to talk about who came to be known by the European as Hermes and Thoth, and they had several names for him. But the principle, all is mind. I think he begins with that: all is mental, all is mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Certainly resonates. I mean, if you think about someone that's foundational to their worldview and to how the cosmos works. And only recently in the Euro-Western tradition have we kind of come to place mind, and we're still a bit confused about it. But that African tradition was steeped in that realization. So the fact that you realized the people you were talking with and some of our leaders didn't know about that tradition is so very important, because that's something we do need to know about, because it is foundational to our understanding of the world and humanity in general.
Yeah, it's really the basis for everything that we know, perceive, understand, and understand. And all of the other axioms either fit into that directly or indirectly, because it's foundational. It's foundational, and it reflects pretty much every aspect of our reality. It's inescapable, and so when you look at it, the law of mentalism and the all being mind, the universe being mental, that says so much. And people will ask me, well, what does that mean? That the all is mind and the universe is mental? And I tell them, that even though it has an array of different aspects and facets, what it means is that mind equates to spirit, pure spirit. And that's how our ancestors related to mind. And that the universe being mental is saying that everything we know, that we see, that we experience, is a projection of this spirit. And so you get into now, during, I guess, the late 80s, you had Elaine Aspect and David Bohm, who began, their journey into substantiating through quantum physics that everything that we see in 3D is a hologram, and that our reality is made up and based on a holographic principle, which means that the only thing that is authentic is spirit, which means that even though we get really kind of sidetracked, and that we identify too much so with the body, but we identify with the body, but we tend to forget that one encapsulation that exists within the body is spirit. And that's what makes everything real. And that's who and what we really are. We have other aspects and divisions which extend from that, but that's our core. And when you get to the understanding that that is our core, then you begin to see that you have the ability, the power to manipulate reality as you see fit. And so that's what we move into. The Matrix, I believe, like explained that so profoundly, when Neo went in and was looking at the little boy with the spoon, and the little boy is like bending the spoons. And Neo looks and he's like, wow. And the little boy hands Neo the spoon. And he says to Neo, don't try and bend the spoon. Just recognize the truth. And Neo says, what truth? And the little boy says that there is no spoon. And then you will see that it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself. And so that circles back into all of this. And just when you go, I mean, especially the places just professionally that you all occupy is just amazing in terms of just the new information that is like just coming forth now, like with the RAS, and with the RAS and just looking at how the reticular activating system creates our realities on a daily basis, and if you don't get a hold of that and begin to reprogram it, so that it benefits your design, your mission, it's going to bring to you like a lot of junkyard information that you really don't need, and it really bonds and shackles you in ways that creates an amazing amount of limitation for how we create the realities that we want to operate in. So there's just so much that feeds into that particular axiom. It's profound.
It is profound. And any psychology worth its salt has to, I think, particularly if we're calling it African centered, has to be grounded in that, has to rest there. Otherwise, we're not really benefiting ourselves or our understanding of human development. You mentioned RAS. Just for our audience who may not have a clue what you're talking about, can you expound?
Yeah, we refer to it as the reticular activating system, and basically what it what it does, it really connects to our source of reality and has the ability through frequency to actually attract to us the very things that we are invested in, involved in, or even thinking about, or how we feel about ourselves. So a person who thinks and feels that they are less than, the reticular activating system generates a frequency which moves out into the environment and literally attracts, magnetizes those particular aspects of reality back to you. You think you're less than? Well, we're going to prove to you that you are less than. You think that you are not liked? We're going to find people that really don't like you. You don't believe in abundance? Well, you don't have to worry, because we're going to prove to you that you're not worthy of abundance. And that's how the reticular activating system generates reality, for us. And we move through life just not really having a deep understanding of what we need to change on the daily.
Absolutely.
And you speak about RAS, it really reminds me of the saying, as above, so below.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious if you could expand upon that concept for the folks at home.
Yeah, as above, so below really deals with the macro and microcosmic order of things. So to keep it light and general, what we see when we look at our solar system, we look at the central sun, we look at the planets, which have their orbit around this central body, the sun, and that's our macrocosmic perspective and view. Now, if we go microcosmically, what we're going to see is the same design, only it's going to be an atom. We look at an atomic particle and we see the nucleus as the central portion of that design. Protons, neutrons, electrons, which orbit around that nucleus in the exact same fashion that we orbit around our sun. So we have this as above, so below dynamic, and we can see it pretty much in so many different things, you know. And if you can embrace that reality, then that makes your journey through all of what this is in our environment a lot easier.
One of the things that reticular activating system brings to mind is the scripture that says, "As a man thinketh, so is he," or so it is.
Uh-huh.
And so, oftentimes, we don't really realize the power of our thoughts,
No.
and therefore, we don't control them. We anything that crosses our mind, we might get stuck on it, whether it's something we want to create or perpetuate or not. But we have tremendous power in our time and attention and what the thoughts that we ponder and
Yeah,
energy.
I mean, for sure. I mean, it's we don't really utilize, we just use, I mean, the cultural design that we operate in has created, because it's so lacking in its own holistic perspective and worldview, that it has created this illusion that we are so expansive in our viewpoint and our body of information, when really we're just operating on a Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal level. We have not gone anywhere close to where our ancestral traditions have been. And a lot of that is because of what we lack looking at that first axiom, because we don't, the world doesn't, humanity doesn't really invest deeply, strongly, efficiently, and effectively into cultivating themselves spiritually. And so we live in a world where the whole idea of spiritual substance, sustenance, fortification is pretty absent. And that absence really creates a lot of the woes of the world, and even with
Absolutely.
amongst ourselves.
I'm curious about your thoughts on, and this might be left field, but I've been like dabbling in lucid dreaming. It's something that I was able to do since I was younger. And I was telling one of my friends like that my conception is that when we're dreaming, that's just another like state of consciousness, right? Like that we're not able to access. But when you are able to lucid dream, right, and control your thoughts and things like that, then you've kind of tapped the surface of being able to use more of that brain power and more of that like spirit, some of those spiritual gifts. So do you have any opinions about some of your research and just lucid dreaming in general?
Oh, no question. No question. I mean, lucid dreaming is a very powerful and empowering tool that everyone can use, because you can go into your dream state in a lucid manner and begin to create your daily realities in terms of what you want to see unfold as you step out of that lucid dream and engage your operations for that particular day. And it can very easily begin with you mapping out in a lucid dreaming state what you want to see, what you want to experience in that day when you come out of that lucid dream, get yourself together, and begin to step out into the day. And you can also, when you do that, because one of the things that we don't do, we have to remember that we live in an environment that is really not beholding to us in a very positive manner. You know, it's like we have all of these different um, distortions, distractions, and malformed, insights and energies which come at us in a variety of different ways 24/7. And so, if we don't take the time before we step out of our door to go out into the world to lay the intention of what it is we want to see and experience, then the world will have its way with us. And that's not good. So just applying that level of self empowerment, that level of personal power before you walk out your front door, this is what I want to see, you know, and you're going to be shocked to see that it manifests itself as you move through your day.
Yeah, that's what I was telling my friend that and then I'll sit back and take in all the wisdom that's been shared. I was saying that I use lucid dreaming to like process things, right? So that might be a tool that we go back in the past and figure out, right, what alternative realities might have looked like had we done something differently. Or like you said, right, if I'm wanting to manifest something, then I'm definitely going to sleep with that intention. So thank you so much for the validation. I can't wait to dream tonight. We'll see what I what I conjure up.
So Jojo, Dr. Jojo, can you say more about the process you use for lucid dreaming and for audience who may not have that experience or awareness?
Yeah. So when we refer to lucid dreaming, it's essentially like, right, when you go to sleep, a lot of the times people, they go into a deep sleep, they are not conscious of what's happening during that time and space. And a lot of people, when they wake up, they can't recall their dreams. So for me, when I was younger, like I would have nightmares. And so I was like, I have to figure out like how to get over this or I'm not going to be getting any sleep. So what I would do is I would just intend to dream about like lands made of milk and honey and cookies and just good things. And then I was able to like, right, go to sleep with that, just that intention of that's where I want to be and not in this hellscape that is a nightmare. So that's just my process. I just go to sleep with the intention of that and I try to meditate on that. And then, while I'm going into I guess that's the rapid eye movement type of sleep. I'm still holding on to that intention and focusing on my breathing and focusing on, right, what that environment might look like and feel like and smell like. And so I'm able to kind of control the narrative when I get into that space. Does that make sense, Donna Linda?
Absolutely. And I think what I understood you to say is that you control your thoughts. And when you lay down to go to sleep, you kind of pre-programmed your unconscious, your subconscious, and okay, this is what we're going to deal with tonight.
Right, exactly.
This is what I want to see.
I'm wondering if there's a way that we can do that as a collective, rather than, one of my theories is that the point we need to come to is that we are all dreaming the same dream. And so we can move in the same direction. Do you have any advice for, how we move to that stage to where we have a collective dream?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you look at the work of like David R. Hawkins, because he was able to really take thought and emotional fields and calibrate them to specific levels of action. generated by thought that we have in the world. So, for example, he looked at the emotion of fear, and he was able to calibrate fear at a frequency of about 200. And then he looked at love in its unconditional state, which he calibrated at 500. And he said that you can take a person who exists and operates in that state, that particular frequency of love unconditionally, and just being in that state, you send out a frequency which shifts the frequency of 750,000 people that are in your general environment. And that you can take 1/10 of 1% of the human population focused on just one thing, just one thing, and you can change the nature of whatever that thing is that 1/10 of 1% of the population is focused upon. You can change whatever that one thing is. And that's the power of collective thought. So with collective, Mhm.
I was saying I saw that research, the one that you're referring to, and then I really wanted to add, sorry, about Linda. I think we've seen evidence of that, right? And I don't know, I might be crazy, right? It might be like a Pisces thing, crazy black Pisces. But right when there were people getting married on plantations in the South, right? It was like the last standing plantation, and white people were going and getting married on the plantation, and then all of a sudden, like there was some type of fire and it burned down. Remember, and I think this was around the time when like all the line dances were popping, right? Where them fans at, boots on the ground. So my understanding was that like, right, we were resisting like as a joy, we were using joy as a means of resistance, right? Our collective vibration when we were engaging in some line dances and all that, right? Like, I don't know, I just felt like we do have that capacity for sure. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just so excited.
No, that's really on point, Carl Jung talked a lot about that, just the whole concept of collective thought and the impact that it has, generally, on humanity, and how we need to really just kind of focus on that to recognize the power that it generates, and that it is a very expedient way to initiate change and transformation. So one of the things that I look at now, for going back again to mentalism, you have some of the old programs like HemiSync, HoloSync, where they're working and looking directly at the mental patterns of the brain, and integrating that. Now, what really takes that next level, and this is what I teach, to my students, is to do a 30-minute, meditation that's based in frequency. But while you're doing that, you're doing like alternate nostril breathing, which is designed to integrate the hemispheres. So now you have a practice that's integrating the hemispheres along with the frequency that you're using, that also lends itself to integration. And so you've just now taken it next level. And when you step out of that, you're going to step into a totally different reality.
It's very interesting that you bring up the HemiSync, which I've practiced and been able to go to places that I was given some truths that I did not come up with myself. They emanated from me, but were discovered on a journey that was um,
You know everything,
exactly.
everything. So when you speak on that, basically that aspect of your inner knowing just goes in, searches out, connects with that piece of information, and brings it into your conscious awareness. But just based on our genetic design, there's nothing we don't know.
Mm.
You know, I mean, we've been dumbed down, you know, for sure, in a very profound way. But we're stepping into a new day.
And as you were talking earlier about the concept of the collective consciousness, it was reminding me a little bit of the concept of the egregor. Um, and I would be very curious to hear kind of your thoughts on that and how that manifests itself in our culture and the world at greater.
It really is what allows the continued manipulation of consciousness to be ongoing, because they create a very specific pattern of awareness that we invest in and buy into. And that pattern is one of delusion and illusion. And so, for example, let me think of a couple of, an example would be astrology. Now, in antiquity, it was known that there were 13 months, not 12 months. Our ancestors had a 13-month calendar with 28 days per month. The only place on the planet that still uses that is Ethiopia.
Mhm.
But at one period in deep antiquity, we all use that particular program, which means that that 13th month had its own 13th sign, which means that if you remove that sign, you really throw off the entire system of astrology.
Mhm.
But when you have the collective belief that what you're looking at is actual and authentic, you literally create that level of authenticity when you're looking at an astrological chart. And that's a level of profundity that, you know, is something. You get a reading that you're like, oh man, that's me, you know? But how can that really be you if you're not really using the complete and total system as it was designed? But the idea that we project out into like just the global grid that surrounds the planet, which collects thought and holds thought, collects reality and holds reality.
Dr. Professor Chandler, what do you recommend as a way for people who see themselves as kind of new to this kind of thought process? What do you recommend to them as a way to get started? I know you talked about the hermetic principles, and I know there are 7 of those, and I know there are correspondences in different cultural systems around the world. But what do you recommend as a way to get started for someone who sees themselves as a novice in this area but wants to understand it better?
Wow. there are a lot of books. I mean, I think like Ancient Future is a great springboard because it incorporates so many different aspects and dynamics into a process that generates worldview. And not only current worldview, but looking at where we've come from to establish our current worldview. You know, where did we originate from that allowed us to carry these ideas, these particular concepts that we operate with on a daily basis. So for me, because it does deal with a practical, it deals with a scientific, it deals with a spiritual, and it deals with an historic perspective, which integrates into one body of knowledge. And so I'm sure there may be some other books that are out there that would do that. I just can't think of one right now, uh, that combines history, science, metaphysics, spiritual thought, all in one.
So I think the reason that the worldview we've been socialized into, that suboptimal view, is fragmented. So all the things you just delineated are one. we've just been socialized in a context that has us thinking, well, spirituality is different than physics, which is different than, they're all interconnected, all interrelated. And when our ancestors were premier in terms of prolificating culture, they knew that. And so that's why when Jehudi said all is mind or everything is mental, it made sense because they understood it's all collective. So one of the ways that people who are interested in moving more toward a true reality, and when I say true reality, I'm talking about the spiritual nature of reality and become empowered, is to begin to look at their own worldview and their own beliefs and see that's what I call a suboptimal worldview or a suboptimal conceptual system. That's what we've been socialized into. So if we can understand how we've been socialized to define reality and then introduce ourselves or be introduced to an alternative cultural frame of reference based on ancestral tradition, going back to Al-Kibu land, the mothers of civilization, then I think we have a foundation because, as you said earlier, when all of that is within us, believe it or not, we know it. Now we just have to remember. And the pathway to remembrance is acceptance that, something about the way I've been taught to view the world and experience the world is faulty and flawed. And what the ancients called a heated way of life versus a serene or peaceful way of life. So it's all out there. And I really love the idea of coming together with a thought and are creating or having an impact on a particular issue or question or problem. There's so many that we have. And one of the things that came to mind while you were talking was if we come together about a feeling, say love, if we come together and all concentrate on vibrating at the level of love and then address a specific issue, like we want the children to feel loved, to feel cared about and protected. I think that kind of thing is something that we could do and should be doing on the regular because it is power and it will.
No question. I mean, love is the most powerful of all emotions, you know. I mean, it's just, and to create perspective around that, because generating the work that Hawkins did, unconditional love being a vibratory frequency of 500 hertz, how many people do you really know that operate in a level of unconditional love? And that shows you how powerful it would be to be able to step into and function out of such a place, because we don't really know that place. We really don't. You know, I mean, we've been manipulated and have been given such profound levels of false information and direction in terms of what emotional fields are. You know, we don't really even know what it means to love unconditionally. That's an
Some of us
amazing
don't know,
place.
but let's not just let's make room for those who at various points in time do. And the reason I say that is because again, the power of our words.
Yeah, yeah. You know, like for me, what I do, like with my students, you know, it's it's having an understanding of word power, thought power, and then a practice that kind of brings all of that together, you know, so that what opens the heart, what activates the heart, what allows the heart to really express itself on much deeper levels that you can now resonate with and take out into the world, you know. So because sometimes we can get distracted and lost in thought if we are thinking that our thought is doing one thing and it may not be doing what we think it's doing, if we don't have other systems that are in place, you know, to ensure it. You know, like one of the masters that I worked with in the past was Swami Satchidananda, and he was Alice Coltrane's main guru. Matter of fact, her one of her best album, which was A Journey into Satchidananda, was a dedication to him.
Mhm.
And you know, I sat with him, and you know, one of the things, you know, he came up with a group of yogis, and they all went their different ways, but he was a bhakti yogi. And being a bhakti yogi, he was a yogi of the heart. And he explained to me why it was so important, you know, to like really, before you begin to do any kind of a spiritual practice, to focus on the heart. You have to awaken the energy of the heart, because it softens and allows the proper integration of all other emotional fields. And without that softening, without that ability to integrate properly, you can really do a lot of damage to yourself. You know, so yeah, the heart energy is everything. Love is everything.
Do you have any practices that would possibly you could possibly share with folks at home that would help them to raise their chi and to allow for their heart chakras to soften?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the system I teach, the first level is really going in and establishing balance in the emotional fields. You know, and that feeds into the whole the law of vibration, because every organ in your body vibrates with a very specific emotional field. So, for example, I'll look at what we're struck with on the daily, and say anger. So the emotional field of anger corresponds directly to the liver. So when you get angry, your liver becomes over activated. And as it becomes over activated, the liver is one of the main generators for the human body. Just in terms of the various things that it produces that allows the body to function and operate on multiple levels. I mean, in men, the liver has 500 basic functions in men, 500. In women, the liver has 900 basic functions. Basic, which means that when you take those 500 and 900 and you integrate and multiply, and you're talking about thousands, thousands of different functions that the liver sees over in the human body. And so every organ, like the heart, love, hate, jealousy, all of these different emotional fields impact our heart energy. The lungs, grief, sadness, but at the same time, on the other end, strength, vitality. That's why when you look at superheroes, all superheroes are well formed in the upper part of their bodies, their chests, their lungs, and what it's showing is a lot of that strength is carried in the upper regions of the lung. And so when you work the lungs, because the lung is the main organ that pulls in vitality from your environment through the breath. The stronger the breath is, the more vibrant your ability to breathe and create direction and intention for what it is you're pulling in. Man, I mean, we're limitless. We're limitless. Every organ has its emotional vibrational field. Every one. The spleen, pancreas, the stomach deals with worry, So as you go through your day and you get stressed out, those are the organs, that have to reap, the repercussions, of that.
What would be the pancreas function? I know a lot of people, pancreatic cancer
Pancreatic cancer,
is
stress.
so
Yeah.
stress.
Yep.
And then one of the things that came to mind too, when we talk about the heart, our hearts can be hardened, literally emotionally hardened.
For sure.
And so releasing that negative energy and the negative thoughts and beliefs that would harden our heart is so critical. Let not
Yes.
your heart be hardened. But
That's where like in the system that I teach, that's where, we use the different tonal frequencies that go directly into that organ, break down the congestive factors that are residing in that organ and release them.
well, we're out of time. We've so enjoyed our conversation today. We'll be so happy to have you back next session, which will be the first. What is this? This is the third Monday, so it'll be the first.
Dead.
So thank you so much for joining us.
You're so welcome. It's been fantastic. It's been great.
And we look forward to the next time. And audience, come with your questions. I see some of you have been busy in the chat, but no particular questions necessarily. But please join us and be thinking about questions you might want to bring.
We did have
Dr.
some
Jenna.
questions on Instagram. On StreamYard, we can't see Instagram, but we'll go ahead and copy and paste those so we can address it later.
Okay, very good. Okay, peace and blessings to all. Let your heart be light and be in love. Much love.
Much
One
love.